Okay, let's talk ethics in sports science and performance testing. So, speaking specifically to things that sports scientists would be involved in when working with athletes, teams, what have you. This would be combine type of testing, talent identification type of programs, what have you. So, ethics in sports science ensures the integrity of research and performance testing. And in the other presentation I have with this module, ethics is our guiding principles, right or wrong. And these do come into play when we are doing sport performance testing, athlete performance profiling. It comes into play in lots of different areas. And the integrity of the sport scientist is really founded in following good ethical principles. And I mentioned talent identification because there is an ethical aspect to that in terms of relying on data from tests as well as surveys or what have you, or interviews, and then working with athletes in a way that you identify talent in terms of ethics of making sure that that process is valid and doesn't accidentally exclude certain populations or certain types of people when you're doing this talent identification, just as an example. We always have to be careful with confidentiality of data, especially when we're working with athletes that may have a contract involved with their performance. Professional athletes, or maybe as a college athlete having some type of NIL agreement, name, image, likeness, or looking to be a professional athletes down the road. It is important to protect their data from loss of confidentiality. It's up to them to manage their data, and if they want to disclose data to teams or organizations or individuals, that's their decision. But we as sports scientists need to be very careful with who we share data with. Even within your organization, it needs to be clear in terms of data that are collected. Who do they go back to? Do they go back to the coach? Do they go back to the sport performance team? Do they go to the athlete? Whatever that pipeline is, that needs to be established with the sensitivity to loss of confidentiality. And then our sports science program, our testing, our combine testing, our athlete performance profiling process, that needs to be done in a way to minimize the risk of injury during the test. So we need to follow good guidelines in terms of preparing people for the test, appropriate instructions, warm up, practice, what have you. Order of tests all come into play with this. And this even applies to using sports science data in developing training programs. Remember, we do not have the exact process of applying a training program to a group of people and knowing that we will be 100% successful in training those people. There is still a process of evaluating the training program along the way and making adjustments, because it's really difficult to develop a program that would last 12 weeks without fail. And so we need to be careful about over-representing some of the information we have through sports science, and that we have the answers. We don't always have all the answers. We are working with a sport performance team to provide information that will help guide setting up training programs and performance testing. Ethics are central to protecting participants and maintaining scientific credibility. You're a sports scientist, and having that credibility that you're able to take an objective perspective of sport, whatever aspect, from an athlete, a movement, what have you, is really important. Having ethical principles really is a founding principle. That's a terrible way to say that, but it's important to have good ethics as you do this, undertake being a sports scientist. And this is just from a former U.S. Supreme Court, Potter Stewart. Ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. Okay, and that is a balance that you often have to strike. And when you're training someone, working with someone, testing someone, you may be able to do something, but should you do it? And do you have the right to do it? Core ethical principles, respect for persons. These come from the Belmont report, respect for persons. We need to give informed consent, and we need to make sure that the athlete or the person being tested has autonomy. They can make their decision as to whether or not to participate in a test or what have you. And professional athletes have contracts, and they may have collective bargaining agreements with their governing body or their organization that allows them or doesn't allow them to participate in performance testing, and those all need to be respected. But bottom line, you do need to inform athletes about the test, about the risks, about the benefits, and you do need to give them the chance to say yes or no. Beneficence, you're trying to maximize the benefit, minimize harm. And the benefits are not always just to an athlete. They may be to science in general, but we do need to keep a balance of the benefits to persons, society, when conducting these tests that are part of a sports scientist routine. Justice and fair treatment for all participants, and this really pertains to one group can't, or even a single subject can't bear the burden of a risk of a study where the benefits are seen through another group or another person. So there needs to be justice that the benefits of the research, if we are doing research, or the treatment is coming back to the participants. And then this is just a separate from the Belmont principle, but important: integrity, honesty, and data collection, and the reporting is just vital. You got to have that trust with the athlete, the coaches, the sport performance team, that the data that you're collecting are valid, reliable, and they're purposeful. The role of ethics in performance testing, there does need to be a level of consent. Sometimes when we've participated in combine testing with another group, that consent happens independent of us. It doesn't happen at each test. It happens as a group, that a team is doing some combine testing and the coach or the organization works through informing their athletes of what's going to happen. But there does need to be a management of risk. For example, fatigue, injury, heat, stress, whatever it is, slipping, sliding, musculoskeletal injuries, tears, strains, what have you. There needs to be really a management of the risk involved with each test. I've seen situations where athletes have not participated in certain combine tests because they were dealing with a hamstring injury, for example, and they didn't want to exasperate it after they understood what was involved with a particular test. We need to be careful about repeating tests because maybe our instrument didn't work during a 40-meter sprint. Something happened, and the subject needs to do it over again, or the athlete needs to do it over again. We need to be careful about not exposing athletes to risk because our instruments are not behaving correctly. Safe and supportive testing environments, that's important. Field conditions, lighting, heat, air temperature, all need to be considered when testing. Is the testing inside? Is it outside? We've done some testing on some gym floors that maybe were not that ideal. They may have not have been cleaned. And so some of the shuttle runs we were doing, athletes were sliding a lot more than what we would have liked to have seen. We do need to be aware of appropriate footwear for different types of tests. Again, aware of what type of field that they will be doing the test on, whether it's grass, turf, or gym floor, or something else. We've done testing on tracks as well. The staff involved with doing the testing need to be trained in ethical practice and emergency response. I mean, that is important. We do have an emergency action plan for a test. We do talk with our volunteers that come and help with combine testing about ethical practice. One easy example is, can they take pictures or not take pictures and post on social media? We've worked with teams where they've said absolutely no pictures, no posting of social media, and we've worked with other teams that are, take pictures, put social media out there, and so forth. When we're working with K through 12 schools, we need to be careful about whether or not kids have permission to be photographed. And so these are things that seem simple, but they do need to be addressed, not only with the principal person running the combine test, but of all the people participating in delivering the tests. And then there is a period where you provide debriefing and feedback to the participants. This varies based upon the type of combine that we do. Sometimes we just give the data back to the organization, and then they disseminate the data. Sometimes you're working with a particular athlete and you're putting them through a combine test, and now you've got to disseminate the information back to the athlete or to the coach or to the sport performance team. Informed consent and voluntary participation, even though the informed consent is more of a research document where if we're going to do a research study, we need to submit a protocol to the institutional review board there's a committee of researchers and faculty and community members that reviews the science behind the study as well as protections for humans as research subjects. And part of that review typically involves having an informed consent process, which may involve having an informed consent document, which lays out all the aspects of the study to the potential subject in the case of a research, where you disclose the purpose, the procedures, the risks of participating in the study and the benefits, and then that person is given an opportunity to say yes, they want to participate, or no, they don't. This still comes into play with combine testing, even for non-research purposes. Still important to describe the purpose of the test to the person, the procedure, the risks involved, and the benefits, and then let them warm up or prepare for the test as best as possible. Participation must be voluntary and free from coercion. And this is something that we really need to be careful of in team sports. If we're doing a research study, we need to be really aware that there can be some undue pressure of team members to participate in the study if the coach says, hey, we're all participating in the study. All the track athletes, you're going to be in this study. We can't do that, okay? Actually, the athletes need to be given the opportunity to say yes or no to participate in the study. And that goes along with combine testing as well. Whatever the program is, obviously the coach is going to be setting up testing that's appropriate for, hopefully appropriate for the athletes and yields information. But at the end of the day, the athlete still has a choice whether or not to participate. And like I said, even in some of the combine testing that we've done, we've had athletes skip tests because they had an injury or there was something going on where they said, no, I can't do that test today. And that's perfectly fine. We just continue with our combine testing with other athletes or move the athlete to another station at that point. Data privacy and confidentiality is really a big thing, especially nowadays with all the platforms where data are being collected, and the identity of the person is not too hard to often find. And so we do need to be careful when we are doing our combine testing that the data that are going into our system are kept confidential. And when we share the information, we need to share it in a particular way with the right people so that the athletes are tracked, but we are not running the risk of loss of confidentiality. Obviously, not putting data out on, hey, such and such athlete just did this for the broad jump out on social media. That's a breach of data confidentiality where we're speaking of specific athletes. Now, there are data out there on specific athletes, but that's public domain information. When you're collecting the data, you need to be very aware of confidentiality of data. This even comes into play with other athletes during the combine, where athletes see each other's performances, and then it can become a little bit of a competition. And some of that is good natured and some of that is okay, but we also need to be careful about some information. For example, measuring body composition. Not everybody wants everyone else to know their body composition. And so we need to be really careful when we collect that information to give that information to the athlete, if that's our charge, or to give it to the sport performance team without disclosing that information to other athletes. It is important to define ownership of collected data. When we work with other organizations, we set up a memorandum of understanding in terms of who owns the data. And that's critical. And athletes, when they get into professional athletes especially, there is often a discussion about what data they own and what data the organization owns. And there is issues with ethical handling of wearable technology and AI analytics. It is amazing how much information is out there. So just as an example, maybe a coach gives athletes a wearable device that they're supposed to wear 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a ring or a watch, a wristband, whatever it is. And then they report back the device 7 days, and the coach downloads the data. Well, that coach has 7 days a week, 24 hours a day data sets. And maybe there's information in whatever device there is that maybe that the coaches shouldn't have access to. We really need to be careful about the ease of collecting some data and the issue of protecting the individual from release of the data in a way that they don't want. Conflict of interest, we do need to be aware of this. Conflict of interest come into play when maybe we're doing a research study and we need 2 more subjects to do the study. And lo and behold, we just need to press these 2 people to be, no, we can't do that, okay? That's a conflict of interest where I need to publish a study, I need more subjects, and I may be putting undue pressure on someone participating in a study. But it might also come into play with coaching, or if you're consulting for a team as a sports scientist, you need to be careful that your pay for consulting doesn't conflict with the information that you get back to the coach, the athlete, or the organization. And we need to be careful, even though this is more the 3rd bullet, of working with industry sponsors. Maybe there's a device that we're testing or some platform, AI platform, whatever it is, and we're testing it in some way. We need to be careful that we're not conflicted with evaluating that instrument, that device, that algorithm, because there's an outside undue influence, maybe through payment of a sponsorship or what have you. And equity, inclusion, and testing. This is important because one of the issues with sports science, and especially sport technology, is some groups are having more access to technology than others. And this is an issue with, even at the Olympics, some equipment is banned to be used in the Olympics, not because it's dangerous, not because it's harmful to the person, what have you, but it's because some countries may not have access to that technology. And so to try to create an even playing field, the Olympics will ban certain technology because not all countries have access to it. But in terms of testing, there is a sample population. We always want to have fair subject selection when we're doing maybe a talent identification program. We need to be careful and respectful of gender, cultural, and socioeconomic differences between athletes, groups of athletes. This is important. And we need to promote accessibility for athletes. That issue of sport technology not being accessible to all countries in that example I gave you, or all groups. It is important to try to provide some equity in that area for athletes. Governance and oversight. I've mentioned the Institutional Review Board. This is the committee at a university. Here at UNLV, we have the Institutional Review Board that reviews all research studies that involve humans as research subjects. And then you want to follow, as a sports scientist, your professional guidelines, NSCA, ACSM, or other professional organizations that provide position stands and guidance for screening and testing, training athletes. That's just as a professional, you want to have that level of credential and understanding that the professional organizations have that has that information. It's important to follow. Some current ethical issues that are really emerging. Well, it's, as I mentioned, the technology. Not all technologies are safe, and even something along the lines of DNA testing or some biometrics that may involve more invasive testing, blood draws, or what have you. Not everybody has access to this information. Not all technologies are safe either. Data sharing and mental health monitoring. This is a really important area with athletes. We do need to be careful about how the information that we collect may actually have a negative influence on mental health. As an age group athlete out in the real world, there's always little anecdotes about people not wanting to upload data to Strava or Garmin Connect or some social media platform that highlights their workout, that maybe it was a bad workout and they don't want people to see it. Or maybe they only upload the good workouts. I don't know. It's because there's this perception that the social media is negatively, posting of training data on social media could negatively influence someone's mental health. They could maybe want to continue a run streak because it's showing up on their social media, and that may not be healthy. There may be a time to step away and have a day off, especially from running. And this is a paper that goes along with this presentation, this module, Current Issues and Future Research Directions in Sports Science. It's a roundtable discussion, so it's sort of an awkward paper to read, but you get many different perspectives on sport technology and sports science in emerging areas. Our take-home message, ethical practice sustains credibility and trust. It's critical. Integrity builds performance that lasts. You've got to have that trust over a long period of time with an athlete, with a coach, with an organization, and with a sport performance team. And you got to commit to continuous ethical reflection and accountability. Okay, thanks everybody.